Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Alana James, and we are starting the new year with rolling out a new self-assessment for the Doctoral Net and Masters Net websites. If you're lucky enough to have a university subscription given to you by your university, you'll sign in to youruniversityinitials.doctoralnet.com, and this will become, or has become already, one of the self-assessments over in the left-hand column, of which there are several. But self-assessing your academic writing, so important for all of us. We want to start with a reflective question, and you will have seen this before. Who is the most important reader of your writing? Always know when you write who you are writing for. And in fairness, a lot of times in graduate school, it is just fine if the most important reader of your writing is the professor that signs off on it. And then you want to really spend a little reflection on how you can ensure that you give that reader what they expect. So quantify that, what they want, what they are interested in, and if you can, what they hope for. So assuming that one of your readers is a professor, we can be pretty clear that they expect a logical progression of your ideas through to either an argument or a conclusion. They also expect that you develop, that you, as they read your documents or your coursework, whatever it is over time, that they'll get a development more expertise and your voice. So Jane's voice doesn't sound like Adrian's voice in written terms or in terms of in their academic writing. And that's true for all of us. But as we write a lot, that voice develops. And professors expect that your work should display comprehension of your field. So as you read more and you have more lit, you pull on more lit, you understand the deeper concepts, you've gone back, you've read the material from those who have started your field, etc. And your work begins to show that you have that comprehension. Just reading that there's some people in the room who are having difficulty with sound. I think the signing out and signing on again is always a good way to go. Hopefully, Timothy, you'll tell us when you can hear. And if not, if you're ever in one of these and you can't hear, they will be recorded. Thank you. He got sound. All right, so this starts the official snippets we're going to have made out of this video, because today we are introducing a 5-step exercise to self-assess your own writing. These are the steps. You'll visually assess using the tools in MS Word. You'll assess your document for logic and flow of your ideas. You'll do a secondary assessment of the logic in your writing. Then you'll assess your written voice, and then, of course, style and references before you move on to involve someone else. As I mentioned, in the future, these, and now actually I think these are in the panel on the youruniversity.doctoralnet website. So step 1, visual assessment. Here we go. Have something open in Microsoft Word. So in Word, you go to File, Options, Proofing. And by the way, all of these are from the 365 Office. So if you have in some cases, if you have a different version than that, your directions will be slightly different. Excuse me, I'm going to see if I can get rid of this cough. Pardon. So close to the bottom of the screen, you'll find a pull-down menu for once you go into File, Options, and Options is at the bottom. Then you go into Proofing, and You're going to choose the right down to close to the bottom, something called grammar and refine. If you work on a Mac, you'll have to figure this out on your own. But what you're trying to do in a nutshell is turn on every tool that Microsoft Word gives you. So you don't want just grammar, you want grammar and refinements, and you want to click everything. What this will do is it will bring up on your document all kinds of new, different kinds of dots. If you're used to just the red line, you'll have green lines, you'll have dots, and they are highlighting different kinds of challenges with your writing. So get all your tools turned on. And you'll also, now you want to go back and you want to do a visual document check. So just go through your section looking for those new highlights, right click on them if you have a PC, and see what Word tells you. Now, sometimes Word is going to tell you something that's not so appropriate for academic writing and you ignore it. But a lot of times it's going to be very appropriate for academic writing. And one of those will be when it tells you you do not have an active sentence. So when you're writing academically, it's good to real early on get into the habit of writing active rather than passive sentences. So Word will catch that. It'll catch other things as well, run-on sentences, things not being concise, etc. And you want to look for those. They may not always be things that are grammatically wrong, but they will include a point that you'll want to look into. So in today's world, your reader is likely to skim your work. We just have to get used to that. And so what you want to do is you want to have short paragraphs. So after you've gone through and you've made sure things aren't underlined and they don't have other things, and you've sort of looked at the work that way, then you go back and you make sure no paragraph takes up a whole page or even 2/3 of a page, because it's for two reasons. It's unlikely that that paragraph only has one point in it. It's a very complex point if it does. And even if it's one point, if you could break it up into two aspects of the complexity, your reader will have a better time, because today's reader skims as often as they read word by word. So you've now basically looked at your work, you've caught the major challenges, and I just want to say, while 99% of you will use Microsoft Word, you also can do some of this in Grammarly, and Pro Writing Aid is another tool. Pro Writing Aid has a lot of other things you can consider. So good tools, and as we go on in our lives, they'll only get better and better. So first step, use the tools you have, figure out in your writing all you. Any questions here? Adrienne mentions that she didn't know MS Word could do all that. At 365 consistently, when they moved away from giving us versions to having pretty much constant upgrades with the 365 license, the tool gets better and better literally all the time, as any good web-based process does. Okay, so step 2. We've got the basics. We've taught what the tools look. Now we need to go a little deeper into the logic of the document. So we go to View, and if you don't know this trick, it's probably the best trick I'm going to give you today. You click on the box called Navigation Pane. In older versions, it was called Document Map, and I think the version in Mac has kind of danced too with whether it called it Document Map or Navigation Pane. But what will happen is on the left-hand side, a column opens up, and your subheadings and headings should flow into that, and they should look like an outline. And I'll show you a picture in a minute. If they don't, then what you need to do is make them do that. And the way you do that is you highlight the headings, then you go to your home and you click on what heading level that is. So all the heading 1s get clicked on the heading 1 box, all the heading 2s get clicked on the heading 2 box. Don't worry at that point about whether your style is right, because once you get them all clicked and they're all in the navigation pane, you can go back to the top of your document. You can right click on the modify on the little box says what the heading style is, and click on modify. And then you make it what it needs to be for your style. So if you're in APA, for instance, everything's got to be Times New Roman. So you make sure it's Times New Roman. You make sure it didn't give it an advanced font. You make sure it doesn't have an extra space before and after. Those kind of things. And then you click a little box at the bottom that says change this for all the headings in this document. And then you can also click and for every other one that uses this template. I haven't had the best luck with everyone that uses this template actually working. So that I could be switching templates in the background or something I'm not aware of. But it absolutely will take every heading you have in your document that's that kind of a heading and make it right. And it'll be the same as you go on. So now you've done very quickly and easily 3 important things. You've gotten yourself a visual map of where your ideas have gone. That helps you with redundancy, because later on you may say, have I said this before? And then you can go back to the heading most likely where you did say it to see if that sentence, pesky sentences, sometimes they repeat themselves, is there. That's one thing. You've also completely set up your document for a table of contents, which I'm not going into in this webinar, but it's all ready to go. And Microsoft will just give you a near perfect table of contents when you use this system. Third, I don't know what third is. Keep in mind that watching your style is important as you go along. So let's see what this looks like. This is a document. It's a dissertation somebody's working on. And you'll notice that in the particular style this student is using, first level headings are all caps. Second level headings come in. Third level headings come in a bit more. Third level headings are difficult because in this particular style that she's using, they have to be indented and are on the same line of the paragraph. And that's a trick, because Microsoft Word wants to make the whole paragraph that heading style. And then you get paragraphs in here instead of just simple sentences. So it's a bit of a challenge. You have to fuss with it so that it's just the first part is the heading and the rest of the paragraph is under normal. So where do you find these things? Well, you click on the navigation pane under View, and the headings are those boxes. That's what I've been talking about if you haven't done that before. So there is no, this is like a secret. If you don't do this, start to do this on every document you write. Always have your headings open. And always another thing you'll notice, if you look at the way my screen shows this document, you'll see I've got all these little dots in between the words. Right underneath the arrow, if you follow the click on navigation pane here, arrow to view, right under the first dash behind the arrow, you see that there's a little box that's a little darker. It's a paragraph mark. I only use Microsoft Word with that paragraph mark on. It saves so much time when you've got too many spaces. And then if you look at this document that I pulled up as an example, see the word relative close to the bottom? That's a word that Microsoft Word thought wasn't an appropriate word to be used in that sentence, and it gave her some other options. You can see again on benefited. So a lot can be seen from the button right below help. Yes, thank you, Adrian, the button right below help. Okay. So you now have your outline. You've indented it. You can track your logic. That was the third thing. So now it's time to assess the logic. Because remember I said one of the most important things that any professor wants to see is that you logically go down to a certain point. So there are two basic kinds of written logic. There are probably 3 or 4, and it's probably a much bigger deal, but basically we see a couple of things. We see people thinking by telling us the big umbrella of the idea and then breaking out that umbrella for us. Or we see people thinking like we're on a path, and they tell us one step and then the next step and then the next step, alluding to where we're going. And when you're writing bigger documents, chapters, things like that, and in fact, for a lot of writing, it can be useful to write a short introduction that tells your reader where you're going. That's kind of the umbrella. Then you take them there step by step. That's kind of like the pathway. And then you tell them where they've been. Nice book-ended, never leave the reader not being sure of your logic. So this is then the section where you're looking at that. And you want to ask yourself, could a person who just read your headings have a fair idea of the content of your study? Headings are vastly underrated tools. And when I examine dissertations for universities around the world, I spend a lot of time looking at the headings in the dissertation or thesis before I ever read a page, because they point out to me where I am likely to find trouble, and they give me kind of a to-do list of things I want to look at carefully to make sure that the document is where it needs to be. So step 2, analyzing the logic of your document. Now, you all have things open, and I'm happy to take questions before we go on to step 3. Is this making sense? And are you seeing things you have any questions about? Going once, going twice. You may be typing. Put up a hand if you're in the middle of writing out something. Hands are just below the chat box. If not, Wilma Khan. Okay. Thank you, Gary. Step 3. All right. So you have done as much as you can do lightly and easily. This is now getting into a secondary assessment of the logic of your writing. And this is where most people start when they discuss revision. All right, so using your comment box, this is what I do when I'm working with a student and things aren't going well in their document. I break it apart this way in order to show them where things aren't going well. So you might as well do this for yourself. It doesn't take much time, but it does take some focus. So you're going to use the comment box in Word. And I have put my comment box up in my top toolbar so I don't have to, so it's always in one place at the very top of my screen and I don't have to go looking for it. And you're going to look at your heading, and then you're going to read every paragraph under that heading and pull out a comment box at the end of the paragraph, and you should be able to write one sentence, max sentence, it could be even a few words, that encapsulates the point of that paragraph. Every paragraph should have one point. You will confuse a reader if you are trying to put 2 or 3 things together. And because we think in a much more complex way than our reader will, being introduced to our ideas for the first time, we need to be really clear that we are giving them the building blocks they need to follow easily through our writing. This develops readability and voice. So go through your document step by step and put up the one point in each paragraph. You've written it, shouldn't take long. If you find that you have a paragraph that has more than one point, divide it up. If you find that you can't easily find the point of the paragraph, right there is a paragraph that needs to be revised. Then reading again the heading and then each point in simple points, no longer looking at the whole document, but just heading in the points in the comment boxes. Are they in the best order? Because you who know your subject so well and really have your ideas so well in hand, probably have them also mixed up together. So do these ideas naturally and logically progress under each heading? Or would they be better reordered? Simple enough, cut and paste, kind of rework the order until you like the way the points are being made, and then rework the transitions in the paragraphs so they follow. Usually that's not too tough. Now, I'll make a point here that this is a secret to argumentation. You may or may not know a lot about argumentation. And if you don't, then I'm going to refer you back to your University Doctoral Net website. And this term, look for snippets, because we divided up the What is Argumentation webinar, and we built it into short videos that you can watch when you're in the mood to just watch a few minutes. Isn't the strategy also called reverse outline? It may be, Adrian. I thought I made it up, but it could be naturally a strategy that somebody else has as well. It developed in my head and being just because I'm working with students. I have had some students whose reading was really, really difficult. And their chance of making it through a graduate program, if they didn't have that sorted out, was unlikely. So this writing it in a comment out to the side was a good way for them to not focus on the paragraph, which was obviously daunting to them. They had it all confused, but just to focus on what they were saying, and then things could fall more easily in order. So whatever we call it, it's good stuff, and I recommend it. Any other questions? And a couple people have said the navigation tools invaluable. Okay, step 4, assess your written voice. Now, here takes something that I have said over and over, and I don't think very many people actually do. And I can be one of those. It really takes something, and I have no idea why, for me to read my own writing out loud to myself. Maybe it's because I get embarrassed every time I do, because I find stuff that I would not have seen, but I can hear. Because if I can't read my own writing without stumbling, then I have not written my sentences as well as I had them in my head. So reading your document section by section out loud is excellent. And it's probably best done from a printed document rather than on the screen, because on a printed document, you can just have a pen and you just make a slash every time your voice broke down. You don't have to figure it out. Why did it break down? Why didn't it read well? You can just notice, didn't read well there or there or there. And then you can go back and after, because that's your assessment of readability. And then you can go back and you can make those sentences and those bits better. You can read it again and you can see if you can make it through without stumbling. Now, if you really want to be good, if you're writing for a journal for the first time, or you're going for publication, or anything that really counts, I would suggest that you read your document and then you take a break and you read a journal article that you admire out loud. And then you go back and you read your document out loud. Your head, it's a funny connection we have between our vocal cords and our ears and our eyes. But this time we're bringing in the ears and vocal cord connection. And if you read the journal article out loud, you picked up some things about the pace of the words, about what kinds of words were interesting to you, about the way that author put paragraphs together that are in your subconscious and not in your consciousness. But when you read your work, you're going to get this little tickle where things could be better. And then we have some discussion. Adrian asking whether MS Word reading it out loud. It's like if you can't make yourself read it yourself, then MS Word reading it is okay. But reading it yourself, I'm in the camp of Sherry here, who says that it does bring in different levels of our cognitive power. But it is a lot of work. And Adrian, the solution is to do it, finish a chapter, put the chapter away, and then do this for 15, 20 minutes a day as part of your work, and then you go on to the work you're doing that's new. You will get to a point where all of your writing gets a lot better, and the things that you find aren't so egregious as they are when you first start doing this. And especially if you put the reading journal and other people's dissertations and other things in the middle, that what goes on between our ears and our vocal cords can be truly magic, and it's nice if it works for us. Any other comments or questions from people in the room? Okay, style and references. Not a lot to say here. You have to be sure that every reference that you cite is listed in the reference, and that nothing is listed in the references that you don't have a citation for. And you have to be sure that you've adhered to the style guidelines of your university. But it's still part of self-assessing your writing. So your final assessment is to involve another reader. This is a nice picture of someone who's obviously very hopeful. You husbands and wives often get brought into this role, and sometimes people pay coaches and other things. But I always say, two people reading who don't have power over your final work will definitely help your time on task with people who do have power over your work, especially if, as Adrian mentions, it's your supervisor and it's a dissertation process. So on the other hand, some of you are writing very big documents. It's like you don't just go out and say to somebody, will you please read my 200-page book? That's about a topic you'll probably find boring, because only a half a dozen people in the whole world think it's the most interesting topic. I'm making a joke on that, but I think all of us can identify that sometimes we drill so deeply into things that we are passionate about. It is hard to find other people who necessarily want to read our stuff. So one of the things that we have going at Doctoral.net is that there are groups. There will be one that follows this in 45 minutes. And if you're interested in developing relationships with other people who don't know you, who would read bits and pieces and give feedback, that's a good place to do it. Also, many of you have universities who have that option, and writing centers, etc. So however you do it, get somebody else to read your work, hopefully prior to it coming from a position of power. Okay, so I'm down to a few things to say about Doctoral.net. Before I do, what's going on with the people in the room? What are you writing? What was most helpful about this today, or was it pretty much just old hat? And a little review to get you started in your year. It's good to see you all again. Adrian mentions, thank you for this, Adrian. Used to think that the other reader had to be in your field. The more I write, though, the more I'm starting to realize that someone who's sufficiently educated but not a specialist in your field actually makes a great candidate for this purpose. I 100% agree. Sufficiently educated. So the words aren't going to put them off, even if they don't know everything they mean. They can get words out of context. And they can tell you things like too much jargon, couldn't follow you here, broke down for me here. You want to ask questions like, when did it break down? When did you not follow? Were there areas when you just wanted to quit? A professional editor. Good. Any kind of person who you can tap on the shoulder for this, and maybe people who are equally educated, and you read for them and they read for you. And then Adrienne is bringing up copy editing with her professional editor comment. Copy editing is very different from the kind of editing that we talked about in this. Copy editing is down to every comma and every small nuance, and really is done when you're preparing documents for final, because you can spend a lot of effort or money paying for copy editors. Copy editing takes a lot of time. It's very finite work. And so having written a few books, Sage always employs a copy editor, and then you go piece by piece, page by page, paragraph by paragraph through whether or not this word might be better than that word because this word was used 2 other pages, and all kinds of things. It's very detailed. Professional copy editors are worth their weight in gold. And they're the reasons that publishing houses like Sage have such good reputations. Anybody else have a comment? Oh, Sherry, if it was your first Doctoral Net webinar, welcome. I just want to point out we have a whole bunch of new things happening at Doctoral Net. So there's a completely new webinar schedule. If you haven't seen it, you can find it on, well, actually, I can give it to you. Here it is. So it's up in the big marker room. It's also right there. And right there is searchable. So you can search on the category. Say you really are only interested in webinars about transferable job skills or about academic writing or about wellness. You can search on the categories and just see the ones that are that category. And it's got both our webinars and our groups. And our groups are Mondays after this webinar session. So if you have a bunch of time around on a Monday, you can do both. If not, the first part of a group is 15 minutes or so, quick discussion of the topic. And then, of course, it's more interactive. Groups are for people in general who want a little bit more personality to the support. Webinars tend to be me talking in a little bit of stuff that happens in our chat, but hopefully groups are a bit more interactive. Those are the topics we generally cluster around. And once you've signed up for all of the webinars this year, starting now, you can opt out for webinars for the rest, webinar emails for the rest of the term. We ran into this problem with, on one hand, some students only sign up for webinars when the webinar email comes out on Saturday or Sunday. They look at it, they say, oh yeah, that's good for me, and they sign up. Well, if that works for you, great. We don't mind putting out those last minute emails. On the other hand, some students say, please, too many emails. And so for those students, we are giving you this option to opt out. It'll opt you out not of every email from us, but for the ones that have to do with webinars primarily. And then we have this new thing, and you'll notice on, it's slowly rolling in. It's not on all the sites yet, but probably by this time next week or the week after, you will have a new look to your control panel. It's a bit more like Netflix. We're very conscious that a lot of people like to watch short videos. We have a lot of good video content, and so we're giving you some options to delve into those categories in that new way. So I hope that's good for you. And as always with us, please let us know what works. Because if it works for you, it'll work for others. If it doesn't work for you, we should be aware of it before we continue our work too much and it doesn't go anywhere. Would I recommend a professional copy editor for the final version of a dissertation? Jane, write me an email on that. I will answer that way. I'm submitting a draft chapter to my supervisor soon. Excellent. Catherine, thank you very much. This is the kind of thing that we very much appreciate doing. Congrats on, small, yeah. We were also listed in the top 100 startups in Ireland last year. So finally, we are going to be one of those companies that in year 10 that we're going to be an overnight success. And it's up to you and you all telling your universities that it matters and that this work is good. So thank you very much for your support. There was a time when I would talk to a webinar room and there'd only be a few people. And that doesn't happen anymore. So thank you very much. Okay, anything else? We have about a half an hour, and some of you may be back for a group. And the group is talking about planning for the 2019 year. And the reason that's important is that many times you are asked by other people what your plan is and what your timetable is, and that's not always the easiest thing to sort out in your own mind or for them. So we're going to look at that in our group, and then the group can talk about what it's like in your university and give each other clues. That's interesting. I'll see you in half an hour. And thanks again for coming. Bye.